Hey, what's up, folks? This is Dave Wood, and I wanted to talk about the education system here for a little bit before I continue with how to reorganize the education system to produce genius kids that have really high practical intelligence. Like, I'm talking geniuses. I'm talking like how to make everyone a genius in North America over the next 20 years or so. Okay, we can take our time. Um, let me explain why I think the education system is messed up. Okay. It produces kids that can't pay attention that well. Now, there's also some kids that can pay attention real well. You say, well, didn't you drop out of school? Yeah, I dropped out of school because school didn't really teach me how to do anything useful with my brain. So I was just like, I'm going to go educate myself. Now, that was my opinion at the time, and I should have paid attention in school. It would have been much better for me. However, my point is what it produces by itself. It produces unruly children that have a difficult time listening, have a difficult time paying attention. And it does that because of how the system is actually not really a good system. It's a bad system. We need a new government education system for kids, right? Well, you say, well, what do you mean by that? Well, let me talk about how genius intelligence. First away, there's lots of ways to grow the brain, not just one, right? Like I grow my brain utilizing herbal medicines. I grow my brain utilizing intelligence exercises. I grow my brain utilizing thinking skills. And I'm always focused on expanding my intelligence, because if I could expand my intelligence, see this, one of the reasons I got so into this recently was because I'd had a situation where my brain had gotten really messed up and I needed to heal it, right? And there was really only one way to, there's multiple ways to help heal it, but there's really only a couple of ways that really did the job. Okay, I needed to heal my heart and I needed to heal my brain, right, from what had happened. And so how did I do that? I did that by doing things that cause massive neurogenesis and growth in the brain. And by doing things that expand my, for example, mathematical ability, my reasoning ability, my reading ability, my memory ability, and things like that. And that's actually what I'm focused on right now, is memory. And I'm not going to focus on that until I'm mastered it, because I need to build a system to I need to build a memory system to memorize the whole Bible and the whole Book of Mormon and the whole Quran. And I'm going to memorize all these things, right? Because there's no word for word. There's no sense in not doing it. I'm going to live for a long time, right? And, I figure I could probably handle maybe one book of the Torah every 6 months or a year once I'm done building the system. And then it'll get faster and 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 faster. My system will be able to be like cross-reference and all sorts of stuff in my imagination, from my visual imagination. So let me explain functions of intelligence and why they're important for prosperity and why they're important for life. And I hope you're getting value out of these videos. I've been putting out a lot of content, and I noticed that sometimes I put out the most valuable stuff ever, and very few people pay attention to it. So look, if you guys really are enjoying my content, I would appreciate it if you would like and share my stuff when you find that it's good. Okay, you don't need to just agree with everything I say to like and share videos. Okay, because otherwise I'll just go do paid media and just forget the YouTube channel for a while. I'm going to drive some traffic to it later, to my good stuff, but I'm still working on my system. I'm almost done. I'm getting close to being in a functional area. I finished all the sales videos and stuff today, and then I got to finish, fill out the products and whatever for the system I'm building. So I'm building lots of systems. See, I'm a systems thinker. So I'm building a memory system and memorize the Torah and stuff like that. So to do that, first I got to train my brain out. Now, let me explain the most important parts of the consciousness and the brain for making money. The most important part of the brain for making money is the frontal lobes. Okay? The frontal lobes are your human consciousness. This is what separates us really from every other creature in the world. It's really what separates us is our massive brain and our massive frontal lobes. I mean, our frontal lobes are massive. It's the most massive part. It's the most extra part of the brain that we got. So the way that we train kids does not properly build out the frontal lobes, actually, like it used to. Kids, I'm telling you, used to be more intelligent than they are today. And you could argue with me based on IQ tests and stuff like that. But remember, IQ tests are just people getting good at paying attention to detail and taking tests, right? We're better at taking tests than we used to be, right? And we've got better technology than we used to have. And we've got better communication strategies that we used to have. But just if you go read the writings of somebody in the hold on. In the 1700s, like, they're so much more complex in their thinking ability than most people are today. I'm not talking everybody, I'm talking most, right? I would say Mark Zuckerberg and Harvard graduates and people like this also have a very complex thinking ability in general. But all of society was like that for a while. People used to understand what the Federalist Papers were talking about. They used to understand the Constitution. They used to understand the King James Version of the Bible. They used to have much better memories. And we're better at a lot of things now. So, we destroy them in the areas of mass communication. But we run to and fro and knowledge increases and we still don't have the truth. So what's the point? Like, what kind of people were generally more happy? Be honest. Somebody today or somebody in 1750? I'm talking in general. Who would be more happy in general? I'm not talking if they're sick or whatever, because we live longer today and stuff like this. I'm telling you, the people in 1750 were way happier than we are today, right? So it's not just all about having stuff and all about getting more rich and more rich and more rich. This is important too, because this is a way we keep score of what we're doing. If what we're doing is working all, we're going to get more rich and 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 more prosperous from it. That makes sense? So anyways, let's go back to the kids. So different parts of the brain are the most important parts for long-term intelligence. Number one, I'd say the study of language, because you got to learn how to communicate, right? We do a good job at that. I think everybody agrees we do a pretty good job at that. But not really. Not really, because we only know how many languages do people in America speak? One? I mean, there's all sorts of stats. Look up, if you learn a second language, the way that it increases the ability to work with information in your brain is astronomical. You pay more attention, you can multitask better. You can do everything you can do better if you learn 2 languages. Now, if you learn 3, 4, 5, 10 languages, like we all should do eventually, it's even better, right? Your brain just keeps getting better and better and better and better and better. So I'd say language, okay? Music, right? I'd say that why in the world does every child not have a musical instrument given to them by their caring community without forcing the community to do it? Like, why don't all the kids have musical instruments? Well, number one, a lot of them aren't going to use them because we don't teach kids how to really get good at music, which is, all you got to tell somebody to get good at music is just take this instrument. Here's a chord chart, right? I want you to go practice all these chords, and you have to do 1 hour a day of music. Music massively increases the ability that your brain has to work with quantum mechanical information. All kids should do music, and they just explore it on their own. We do a little lesson or whatever, and then they go figure it out. We give them instruments, and then just let people figure things out, right? And we're going to form natural music, right? Everyone should do music. It should be all through school, people doing music an hour a day. The reason is because music helps people romance, helps men romance women, and women romance men. Romance is one of the most important things that exists in society, if not the most important thing, right? So music, kids need musical ability, and it should be regimented 1 hour per day. Like, hey, from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock, you're not allowed to do anything but play with music till you're done. Right? So the parents should be participants in that too, and they could do it in school, right? But I'd say they do it in school. And then kids, they learn music. So, and you need to teach kids, we need to teach kids to do things that they like to do and also that they don't like to do. Right? I used to only do things that I like to do. And that resulted in me eventually making a lot of money because I focused on my skills. And then eventually I lost a lot of money. And now I'm rebuilding more money than I've ever had in the past. Now, the reason is because now I'm focused, but the reality is now I've got the abilities that I didn't have before, right? The abilities in my consciousness to manage things, to manage information, to manage people, and to do things. Like, I would have no problem running a corporation with 500 employees right now. None whatsoever. It'd take me a little bit to learn it or whatever, but I could manage the whole thing in 3 hours a day, right? So, number one, right? Music, language. Number 2, music. Okay, kids should study language for an hour a day, like learn new words, learn to play with words, learn to read and write. We do a good job with language. I don't think we do that good of a job with music. I think there's a lot of good musicians in society, but I think in my ideal society, everyone would be musicians because they'd all play music an hour a day. And that's going to balance out and harmonize the quantum mechanical energy in their brain. Society would be much more peaceful if everybody played music, right? In general, it'd be more peaceful. Society would be more peaceful. And people would get more intelligent, which is important for the advancement and the future of society. So, number 3, okay, you have creativity. Creativity is so important for making money. If you don't exercise your creativity, and creativity is not just about drawing, it's not just about art, it's not just about music, but so creativity comes with the music, but also you have art and things like this you can do with creativity. Now, here's the big one though. And this is where I think society is missing out on the training of the kids. We need systematized, gamified, okay, memory training and mathematical training for the youth, right? From a very, 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 very young age, kids should be doing much more complex mathematics. Now, I'm just going to say this out loud. The system they're teaching in school right now, Common Core math, that I've seen in schools, like, I think it's a really dumb math system that produces kids that can't ever figure it out a lot of times, but a lot of times eventually they understand all the answers and stuff like that they get too, but it's not a good math system. Common Core is not a good math system. I'll tell you, the regimented training from a very young age, we get kids doing Vedic Indian mathematics, right? People in India are much better than Americans in general at math. Not in all the case. The mathematicians here are very good as well, but there's more kids that have genius IQs in India than there are children in the United States. This is actually going to create a problem for us eventually in our terms of being able to compete. We just have more resources than them, and we're a lot better at selling than they are. And we're a lot better in the ways of business and structures and rules and stuff like this in society. And they're better at other things. They're better at the ways of enlightenment. Vedic math comes from enlightened mathematics. If you train kids from very young age in Vedic mathematics and memory, they'll be able to do things like instantaneously calculate times and dates and hours of the day based on positions of the sun and the stars, and they'll be able to project their minds like way out in the future and see, like you know exactly where the moon's going to be. And it's not just about that. Vedic mathematics helps you, like, you say, well, we have calculators. Okay, I'm going to say something. The problem is we use calculators for everything. This is actually a problem because this, over a period of time, damages the consciousness because the consciousness needs the math. It needs to learn to keep track of numbers. Now, if you're already very good at math and you choose to use a calculator, this is a very different thing. My point is that all the stuff you can do in a calculator can actually do faster in your brain. Your brain has to be very trained in order to be able to do that. However, it's very easy to train, and it's especially combined with memory training. People can do long form equations instantaneously in their minds, like faster than, you could figure out what to do on a calculator, right? You already got the calculation if you train from a very young age, right? So first of all, let's go before really mathematics. What do we do? Memory training. Okay. Mozart and Beethoven could do this too, but like Mozart, I believe, was the best. He had like, he would construct orchestras in his imagination and then go and write it down. So he'd actually build it in his imagination, write it down, and then just it would work the first time. He didn't even play around. He just did it in his imagination. Then he did the music. Right? You say, well, he was so genius. Gosh, look, anybody, if they're trained from a kid, could be doing things like that by the time they're 12 and 15 years old. Any child could actually be able to do that. Maybe 18 years old, okay? You say, well, what do you mean? Well, where did that visual imagination? He must have been so gifted. People used to train their memories, people. This is like the lost art of memory. If you look up like books on memory palaces and things people used to do, because people used to have to keep track of things. We didn't have technology to do everything, so you used to remember where they went, remember where they're going, and actually it was maybe a little easier to remember where they went because they were riding horses, and the horses go slower than cars, and cars go past things really quick, and you miss a lot of detail. You can also pay attention to a lot of detail. My point is that if you there's nothing more important for the development of the consciousness and the ability of the consciousness to create prosperity later on in life than visual-based memory training. You say, well, why is that? Well, first of all, where does prosperity come from? Prosperity comes from the laws in the Torah. Those are the laws of prosperity, right? So prosperity comes first, though, from what's inside your heart and inside your imagination. Now, if your imagination is weak, and, you know, so if your imagination is weak and your imagination is unstructured and your attention is like, see, I struggled my whole life with attention. You say, well, why have you struggled with attention and why you're talking about this? Because I'm telling you, give me still probably, we'll say 6 months to a year, I'll have better attention than anybody that you've ever met in your entire life because of how I train my brain and the fact I've got my consciousness exponentially compounding, right? My attention just keeps getting better and better and better and better. I keep getting faster and faster and faster and faster at working with mathematics. I keep getting better and better and better at every skill I do. I used to not be able to dance, and now I can dance. I could pick up new dance skills in like 2 seconds. It used to take me like an hour of just sitting there. And you know, like I pick up music faster than everybody around me, and I pick up math faster and stuff like that. So, but I don't consider myself great at mathematics still now. Now, here's the thing, though. I'm talking about we need a system to train people, right? So the value in doing things like memory training is when you do memory training, right, you're connecting things visually in your imagination. And it's really important to do when you're doing visual memory training that you visualize everything in 3 dimensions and color and detail and vivid depth that are large, right? And what it's teaching you to do is it's teaching you to make neural connections from your visual memory. Now, so what happens is that somebody with weak attention and weak visualization skills in general is going to have a hard time manifesting anything great in their life because their attention wanders from what it is that they want to do. Now, this is a problem that I've conquered in several ways over the years. What I used to do that allowed me to succeed was I started taking caffeine and stuff like that because I needed to pay attention, and I couldn't figure out how to get myself to pay attention, and like nothing I did worked, right? I really struggled with attention my whole life, right? And so then I figured it out, right? Caffeine. Oh, but here's the thing. Caffeine also, it wore out my body. It wore out my mind. It also causes brain damage, and even in small amounts. The Buddha said to stay away from caffeine for a reason. There's other ways to conquer attention. For example, meditation, especially Zen meditation, is very good for attention over a long period of time. But it's not just attention. It's your ability to use visual information in your imagination that is the key with emotion to manifesting a prosperous future. Your ability to visualize the Ferrari you want to drive. Your ability to visualize the house that you want to build. Your ability to visualize the invention you want to create. Like, okay, so take another one. Nikola Tesla is the best inventor in history, in my opinion. In history, I don't think there's been a better inventor than him. I think a lot of people have invented great things, but nobody has, still to this day, he has more patents for more different kinds of technology, okay, than anybody that ever lived. One guy. Now, he wasn't married and he just invented things all day, probably 12 hours a day. And he was very obviously enlightened, Nikola Tesla was. And this guy, he had something as a youth where he had a problem where he would see hallucinations, okay? And at first it was very distracting to him and he couldn't, couldn't pay attention or whatever, right? And then he went and, studied in India and things like this. And he figured out that if he took those visual hallucinations and he actually made them into something, okay, that he just had imagery floating around his imagination. It was controlled imagery rather than just haphazard hallucinations. This actually would be a much better thing to do with people, for example, that are struggling with, visual hallucinations in their environment, right? People will have problems actually with that. Just teach them how to control it, right? Maybe they should have a part of their brain like Nikola Tesla they need to learn to control. So he would invent something in his brain. It would be perfect every time. And then he would build it and it would work the first time, every single time he invented something. Now, how do you do that? Well, I'm going to tell you something. Okay, I'll be there eventually, but I'm not there for a while. He did that because he had a very trained memory. There's no possible way he could have done that without a trained memory. Trained memory, visual attention, visualization stability, holding an image and manipulating and rotating. And he'd spend probably 5-6 hours inventing something in his mind. And then later, maybe he could do it in an hour. My point is with this, and Einstein, for example, when he was thinking of the relativity, what did he do? He visualized himself in a light beam for 10 years and just kept asking the question, if I was a light beam, what would it be like? And based on that, he came up with eventually the theory of relativity, which is still one of the most scientifically proven theories that's in existence. Actually, my theory will be much more proven than that because it'll explain everything in the universe eventually. The quantum mechanical energy thing explains relativity, actually, is what it does. But I need to be very, very good with math and stuff to do all the math for that and everything like that. It'll be very complex math. We'll probably need artificial intelligence technology for it, to be honest. Because I don't know a lot of time for all that. But my point is with this is that the visualization in something, eventually it produces results. Let me explain. So the last couple of years, I had my ups and downs and stuff like that, but I spent this time visualizing the new and positive future we're going to build. I keep visualizing it and 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 visualizing it. And now it's actually starting to come together now. It is. I got people buying my stuff. I've got people reading my emails. You know what I mean? I've got a plan for my blog. I've actually got a plan. I'm very system oriented. I need a system in order to figure out how to build a future. So every day I work a little bit on my system, and then I work a little bit on my marketing. And if I work more on my system than I do on the marketing, then all of a sudden all my marketing I do works because the system is there, right? So systems are very important. It's very important to have education systems. It's very important to have memory systems, and it's very important to have math systems. So how do you train math? Well, first it starts with memory. You got to teach people how to work with numbers in their imagination visually, because numbers are very hard to memorize, right? And therefore it's very difficult to learn math because numbers are hard to memorize. But if numbers were very easy to memorize for people, learning math is actually very easy because all it is memorizing the numbers and the structures and the mathematical formulas, which you can do in seconds if you have a trained memory, right? So then what do? You get it very simple. You have a memory training program, right, that teaches people to work with numbers and trains people through all the simple structures of intelligence first. So first it's memory training, teaching you how to organize your imagination, teaching you to build a memory castle, teaching you how to organize the information in your imagination. And we have great programs that are friendly to kids, then more complex programs maybe a year later, and it keeps getting more complex and more advanced and more complex and more advanced and more complex and more advanced, right? Like the training course I'm going through now. Well, I have lots of courses I've gone through in memory, but the ones I've studied that are the best, maybe a 6-year-old would have a hard time with them. But you have something very simple for the kids that teaches the kids the skill, that teaches them how to do it fast, and then you teach them how to expand and store and visualize more complex, structured information. What's that do? it's going to massively expand their attention. And we got to get kids off of all ADD medications. 100% kids has got to stop taking that stuff. I won't allow it. I'm telling you that we got to start up the pharmaceutical companies. It is an evil thing to put any child on any form of amphetamines. And really, the children should not be used to stimulants either, in my opinion. But this is a decision of the parents if they want to drink caffeine or whatever. These are parents. But it's not good for the brain. My point is that we got to get that stuff off, because all you got to do is from a very young age, you teach people to train their attention. So there's lots of things to training attention. For example, we learn to write with one hand. Kids need to learn to write with both hands equally, and then eventually both hands at once, right? This will train between the left and right hemispheres of the brain, everything that they're learning. So one day they do mathematics with their left hand, and the next day they do mathematics with their right hand, right? And this trains reflex connections in the brain that teaches them to be more balanced. And then you combine that so the first 3 years of this is my opinion, the first 3 years of a kid's life, they should be learning how to learn, practicing how to learn, mastering how to learn, and then they should just use that. You could take all the kids that somebody learns in 3 years in schools, and a kid under my system would be able to memorize all that stuff after his first year in 2 weeks. You just give them the data, they would just memorize all of it. Like, you're talking a 6-year-old could do that, a 6-year-old, right? But it's got to be very regimented, very strict, okay? We got to teach kids how to be perfect with their consciousness, right? Now, there's a lot of things to teach purposes. Like, for example, they used to smack kids or whatever, but I don't actually agree with the way people generally do that. Because I think you could do it more gently, because really all a child needs is they need a response train. So, for example, you could have the right hand be their yes hand and the left hand be their no hand, and you get a little tiny thing that doesn't hurt, and just slap their hands and say no, yes, and make sure they got more yeses than no, so they know. And then you teach them to do it with themselves. So they, like, when you get it wrong, say no, and then when they get it right, say yes. Or when you get it wrong, say not yet, and then when you get it right, say yes. And this will train the distinctions in the brain. And they could actually do it themselves. It's just neurofeedback, right? So in any case, we need a system, okay? The system should actually include a lot of things. However, the first thing we should do is we should teach kids the basic language skills. And as they're learning language, they learn how to write it one way, and then they learn how to write it the other way. Then they learn how to write it forwards, then they learn how to write it backwards. This trains and balances out the writing skills of the brain. So both sides of the brain can do everything that the other side could do. It's very, very important to do that for the future of kids, because it's going to solve, they're not going to run into problems with autism that is out of control generally. And I know how to heal autism anyways, but it'd probably take me with a kid, depending on how severe, 3 months to 6 months or something like that, or 2 years maybe. And you study one way and then you study another way, balance out both sides of the brain. So this should all be regimented, very strict, timed behavior. So you tell kids, look, we're going to do this for this amount of time until that bell goes off. This is all we're going to do, and it's going to be a lot of work, and we want you to focus, 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 focus. And if you run into problems, just say, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it. And obviously, there's going to be some kids that learn faster and other kids that learn slower. This is the nature of the world. But if we do it this way, every kid, okay, will be a genius by the time they're like 8 years old. Because it's very easy at the young ages of a brain to massively expand the neural networks. And this is when the most important development happens in the brain. Now, learning how to pay attention to details for kids, learning how to pay attention to details and learning how to hold image representations in their imagination, then we teach them how to utilize that to think about the future that they want to have, and also to pay attention to their environment. So we get kids imagining the future and building dream boards, and stuff like this, and imagining what they want their life to be like as they go through school, right? So the main things are, you need a technology system. It could be app-based, like a cell phone-based memory training or something like that, right? Where they have feedback, and then they go and they memorize 10 things at once, and then 20 things at once. And then what the memory training does is they go through it, is they're also learning as they're going through the training, they're learning key details that, we want the kids to learn at a very young age in school. We're teaching them how to make image representations for letters and numbers. What does this do? This builds a skill where their entire life, they're going to be able to remember names. They'll be able to memorize whole books, right? They'll be able to hold a lot of information in their brain at once and then work with that information in a way that's actually useful and constructive to society, right? Does that make sense to you? Right? The problem that we have today is that because kids don't train their attention, they get very bratty. You say, well, what does not having good attention have to do with being a brat? It has everything to do with being a brat. See, when your visual attention is very trained, it gives you the ability to suppress impulses. This is actually where impulse suppression generally comes from. It comes from visual attention, people. So impulse suppression would be the difference between somebody who's, for example, on the one hand, very ADD and somebody else like Donald Trump. Okay? Donald Trump does not have a problem, I promise you, controlling his impulses. Everything he does is very calculated. Whether you agree with him or not, he's one of the most calculated people you've ever seen. I'll tell you, Frank Kern's like that too, I can tell. He's probably one of the most calculated people I've ever seen in everything that he does. He controls his impulses, right? And the way he does that is because he's got a very good visual attention. Very good visual attention and very trained memory from a young age over a period of like 3 years. And I'm telling you that a kid should spend, if they have 8 hours of school in their first 3 years, okay, I'm telling you that 4 to 6 of those hours should be spent working in their visual imagination. And then what you do is you build a system where you connect your visual imagination to your audio system. So then you learn. This is going to give you an example, right? I could outline this in a document and give it to some technology people and have them build a system for America. And then all of a sudden that we have a system for America. So the teachers are prepared for a baby boomer generation because all of a sudden their job is actually more easy because then all they do, they teach a lesson, then everybody works in the system. They teach a lesson, everybody works in the system. They teach a lesson, everybody works in the system. And all of a sudden kids are remembering everything they say. The kids are remembering everything that they do. The kids are remembering everywhere they go. The kids are remembering every face that they see. The kids are remembering every mathematical formula that they use. Now all of a sudden they can work with the mathematical equation in their brain, right? At the same time as they're playing music, at the same time as they're dancing, because their brain is so balanced out. They can do things that just normal adults. Another thing that we need to teach kids to do from a very young age is kids should learn how to dance. Look, we need to teach people from a very young age the art of proper romance. Because what happens is romance is very difficult for kids if they're older, if they don't know how to dance. So, for example, the church I go to, there's a thing on Tuesdays where they teach the swing dancing and stuff, right? It's a singles word thing. And I'm not single, but well, I suppose I am because my wife's not with me right now. But like, I don't consider myself single, right? But I go there and I'm going to start going there. They teach it because I don't know that kind of dancing, right? But I'll pick it up in like 2 seconds because the expansion of my intelligence, right? Because I pick stuff up instantly now. Like instantly I pick it up. I pick up everything instantly. Like if I got around a bunch of people in different kinds of businesses, I could literally just absorb their business plans and everything like that and just start modeling them like without even need to learn anything. I'm that fast. Now, I didn't used to be like that. It used to take me a while to learn stuff. Now, it still takes me a while to remember certain kinds of things, and it takes me too long to do the things I want. But I'm telling you, if a child spends, 3 to 6 hours a day in school doing nothing but working with their visual imagination as they're doing other things, you will build neural networks in those kids that'll keep them away from drugs. They'll keep them away from dumb decisions. It'll keep them away from getting in car accidents when they're teenagers, when their hormones are getting out of control. That'll teach them how to suppress impulses and only do what's in accordance with your plan. You're training them from a young age how to build structured plans. And this needs to be in a very complex structure that should be in the structure of what we do should be in a system, and every kid in the public school system should go through that system. And then the states would have freedom to have their own additions to training and stuff like that, and their own, like, we only want to train the kids 3 hours a day in visual imagination. But I'm telling you, the first 3 years, it should be 4 to 6 hours a day doing nothing but playing with their visual imagination in between other things, because this is going to teach kids, okay, how to use their brain to do things that nobody in society has been able to do since the days of ancient Jerusalem and the days of Enoch and the days of Adam and things like this, because these are all things that people do. This knowledge comes from the Garden of Eden, right? So what we do, we train them to work with data. Then all of a sudden they all can do things Mozart can do. Now all of a sudden we have music everywhere. It might be a little bit harder to be a professional musician, but nobody would care because there's music everywhere, right? And then the people that really want to be professional musicians, it's all about how much value they can give to society and stuff like that, right? So we do things in a way, right, that builds the kids into the safest, most intelligent, most prosperous kids that exist by focusing on building their intelligence first. And you say, well, what if they're older? Well, we give the older kids the system of the younger kids, right? And we give them a more complex version, and we say, look, if you're serious about your future, spend 2-3 hours a day in this system. So we do the same thing for the adults, but they're going to be obviously having to learn these skills later. So they're going to form a little bit more slow, right? But that's okay, right? Obviously the younger generation will then be way more intelligent. That's the way it should be. Every new generation should be more intelligent than the last and have better memory and better attention detail. The next thing we got to do is we got to teach people proper diet. Look, schools cannot have food in there sold in the schools that is from tortured animals, right? If it's going to be meat, it's got to be meat that's treated well if we're giving it to the kids. We don't want kids to get the diseases and stuff like this and this bad food that we have in society. We don't need to do it this way. I was just in the street the other day and I was watching this. There's these guys wearing Guy Fawkes masks in Street Fest. I'm going to upload my Street Fest videos later, and they had this video, right? They had this video, and it's like they had this thing, and it was talking about these, it was about factory farming or whatever. And I don't like watching that stuff, but people are running from the truth, right? We can't have that stuff. We can't be feeding that stuff to kids. It should be illegal to feed that stuff to kids in school. If a parent's going to give it to them because we haven't changed it yet, or they're poor or whatever, it's different. But we need good food that balances out the sugar in the brain. No candies like all the time in school. We shouldn't be training kids to eat candy. I mean, we have the fattest nation in the whole wide world. We got to change that stuff, guys. It's irresponsible. No candy in schools, just carrots and fruits and vegetables, and stuff like whole foods, so it balances out their energy, and they have, they're cared for. They got the proper food. They got the proper water, and then water that doesn't have fluoride in it, water that doesn't have chemicals in it, right? Because this is going to mess up the kids' brains and it'll mess up their consciousness. And some of that damage takes a very long time for a brain to repair. Kids need clean water that's filtered out from all these dirty chemicals that society is putting in the water. So the water is very important. The food's very important. The energy balance is very important. And most important thing is the system. The actual system of education needs to be technology-based and to be able to scale to unlimited levels and be a decentralized education system to where it can move into homes if there's national emergencies or something like that, where schools are being attacked, and the education continues and there's zero problems. A parent could educate their kids with it just as good as a public school should, so that all the parent has to do is just get the lesson, explain it, the kids work in the system, right? And then they can homeschool their kids. They can have community schools, and the churches can pick up the system, and everybody can have their own education system. We need a decentralized education system. And then because everybody's training their memories, all the tests are easy for everybody. They just memorize all the data, which is really what matters. People need to be able to keep track of information and data. What the purpose of all those tests are, because nobody remembers this stuff, is the problem. You're teaching your brain to work with data. This is the purpose of it at a young age. So we actually teach the brain to store data over a lifetime, okay? And then people will be able to do things at a very young age, like pick up the Bible, for example, and memorize the whole thing like they used to be able to do, because they'll understand the structure of how to do it, and everybody's brain can do this. This is the thing. Everybody's can expand intelligence and work with information. The idea that intelligence is fixated at birth is a mentally insane, ludicrous idea. It's not. It's only as fixed as the people are, as they are absorbed in not doing things in the right way. So, and again, what are the bases of the system? I hope that this has explained it in a lot of detail to you. The bases of the system are rebalancing the brain, left and right sides and everything. And you also teach people to write with their toes and stuff like that in case something happens to their hands. Now they got their toes. You know, you want backup systems, but you don't want to think like that. You just say, hey, look, we want you to learn to write with your toes. So people learn to write with their toes. They learn to write with their hands, and this will build neural networks in the brain to work with information like you can't imagine. People need to train listening skills. How do you train listening skills? Well, especially if a kid has a hard time paying attention, what do? Short bursts of information, pause it, repeat as much as you can of what you heard in the information. You keep doing that, and then you keep repeating it, and this trains the brain to automatically repeat what you're listening to, which is what people do. They're good listeners. And then what do? You learn how to turn what you're hearing into visual images, which you can really only do if you don't have a good visual system, because some people do this naturally. If you have a trained memory, you learn to work with images. So you learn to turn images. Then you learn to put them on landscapes, and now all of a sudden you're doing stuff that only autistic people could do, and everybody in society will be able to do it. This is the thing. And you say, well, what's that got to do with their life? Because their concentration ability is going to be so expanded, and their mathematical ability is going to be so expanded, that people are not going to have the problems that society has is later in their life in general, because they'll be able to suppress their impulses and control their behavior, always thinking about what it's going to do right now, and also what it's going to be doing in the future. And we teach people to think at a very young age. Look, you got to think forever in the future out. Like, we got to do everything in a way that rebuilds humanity, that what we're doing is working a million years out, right? We do it like that. Now, the next thing is, right, with that, you teach a kid in the first few years from our system. Our system teaches a kid how to build their own consciousness system. It will only take about 3 years to really teach a kid to do this. And then that consciousness system, by the time the third year is done, maybe the fourth year is done, it'll be fully automatic. It'll just automatically function. And, they'll need to train it. And we teach them habits all through their life. It's like, hey, you want to maintain this habit for 1 to 2 hours a day in the morning, working with visual information. Here's the system to do it. It's free. You know what I mean? Or, when you're out of school, you have to pay a little subscription for it, right? We give this to all society. Then society retrains their consciousness to pay attention to detail. And all of a sudden, everybody's paying attention right now. And all of a sudden, everybody notices everything that's going on, right? Why do they notice? Because they can pay attention to it. Because they've been educated to think for themselves. Because they've been educated to remember the data and remember the lessons from history, right? This is a whole revolutionary system. It'll produce the most brilliant kids that have ever walked on the face of the earth, because we have better technology today starting than anybody's ever had to do something like this. We can produce the most brilliant children that societies have ever been able to produce ever in the world by doing it this way. And then the next part of the education system is we need to include some spirituality in it. So rather than forcing kids, for example, to do what the government wants them to do, we don't do that. We say the parents need to tell us, out of these different spiritual systems, what a kid is supposed to study. And children study their spirituality and learn about the other spiritualities if we can get society to do it. But if they don't want to do that, that's fine. They don't have to, right? They study their spirituality for an hour a day. And kids whose parents don't do it, then the kids can just choose on their own, right? You teach kids to study and honor their parents' spirituality, right? As long as no Satanism or stuff like that in schools. We can't get that stuff in the schools because it'll destroy things, right? But like the parents' spirituality, and we just say, hey, what spirituality system do you want, right? Then the kids study that stuff and they learn stories about it, and they learn all the cool spiritual stories and stuff like this. And this teaches their imagination to work, right? And all of a sudden they're excited about something in the future, because all the people that are the most successful in the world, they're all very connected with their higher power, whatever that higher power is. And sometimes it's a lower power they're connected with, but they're connected with something, right? People are very spiritually connected who are successful all the time, right? Who stay successful for a long time. They got to be spiritually connected. And if they're not, their life starts getting messed up. People that are successful and balanced and happy, they're spiritually connected. So you teach kids how to be spiritually connected, right? And then what we do is we build the system in a way where we build it, and it's very easy to translate and very easy to change the information Then we sell it to other countries, right? We sell it to other countries. Now all of a sudden, the United States can make money from something, and we can have private companies build it, and the United States owns 10% of it, or whatever, or the United States owns % of the system, and then the private companies that help build it over % of the system that contribute, right? Then we re-educate the world through proper balanced checks and balance. So what we do is we build in internal education systems into the education system. So internal checks and balances where kids can talk to kids who are connected into the system, who are at their age group in schools all over the world, and they can practice with each other, and we'll hang out on the phone. And all of a sudden, they can practice their listening skills with a real person. And now all of a sudden, they're training themselves to make distinctions, yes and no. They're training themselves, right, to remember information. They're training themselves to work with data, right? And then what do? Well, we use all that to teach them better reading skills. I could teach a young kid, especially. It's very easy to teach a young kid how to read much faster, right? However, it's not really important that people read fast. Let me explain this. What's actually important with information is that people remember what it is that they're studying. This is actually what's important, because if you can't remember it, you can't use it. You don't really need to remember everything word for word, right? But I like word for word, Now, I'm not going to memorize every book I ever read word for word, or memorize every book I ever read or whatever, probably. But eventually I'll remember every book I ever read. Just the first time, go around right through it. That's how trained my memory will be eventually. Word for word eventually, right? Because my consciousness is expanding so fast. So my point is with this, all this stuff, is if we teach kids things that massively expand the neurology at a young age, what else does that do? Now all of a sudden, because their brains are so good at work, right? My brain was never really good at work. My brain was good at creativity, right? And my brain only became good at work when I started taking stimulants in the past. Now I don't do that anymore, right? Now my brain is like a million times better at work than it used to be when I used to take stimulants, but I take no stimulants, right? So my point is we can train kids and then they don't need stimulants ever. They're never going to run into addictions because all these functions in the brain are all built out that cause addictions. If you train kids at a very young age, now they might have problems with their parents or whatever, right? And we need therapy. Well, kids will still run into problems. But my point is addictions are actually very hard to form in a very whole, very well-centered, very balanced brain. Because the brain is just like, I don't want that. And we teach kids, right, what to say yes to and what to say no to at a very young age. We train it in their neurology. We train it in their biology. We get NLP people in there and train the kids. It's like, hey, let's put a program in that conditions the kids to stay away from drugs, for example. The condition is very easy to build into a system that conditions kids to stay away from things we want them to stay away from as a society. Now, all of a sudden, we're building children that are actually independent because they can use the own system to communicate with other kids, and the other kids are part of the education system. So now, essentially, what's the job of the teacher? To watch the kids. See, the system should be so good that all watching over the kids. That's how good it should be. However, the teachers also need to be educated and also need to be able to share things and also need to be able to use the system. Okay? So my point is this. That's a much better education system than what we use now. Now, the rest of the education, what is it? Well, we systematize everything so people learn everything and remember it. I mean, how long does a teacher need to lecture if everything's systematized and gamified? 15 minutes of class? And then everybody just focuses on remembering and using the information. So we build in the system practice utilization with every skill somebody builds. Very easy to do this stuff with artificial and technology. We just got to map it out. Artificial intelligence technology will do it. Right? Now, all of a sudden, everybody's got a way to learn everything that they've ever wanted to learn. And we allow them to learn. We give them all the facts of history and the lessons. So, like, we never teach just, oh, this happened, without teaching why it happened and what we can learn from that, and then how we can apply it in their life. And then they memorize all that as they're going. And if they go slower and learn less, they know more. Remember, many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. But I can't remember the other part of that scripture. Actually, it's like the knowledge shall increase, but the they're just lost in the knowledge, right? They're just lost in the knowledge. All right, look, I've been talking for like 50 minutes now about this, so I got to go work on my system. Okay, I've spent a lot of time today working on my consciousness system because this is part of helping everybody else rebuild their consciousness. Is fixing all the things in mine, which I've done a great job of over the last couple of years. Especially now, if you look at my stuff and you look how clear my videos are, and you look how clear my energy is, and all this stuff. This comes from So you build a system for everything. A system. We systematize. Everything needs to be systematized. Everything. So it's technology-based systems needs to manage society. And then the people, what do? They just show up. And then whoever gives more value is who gets the jobs. This is the way all jobs should be. Whoever gives the most value gets the jobs. Whoever can sell the most gets the jobs. Technology-based societies are going to be much more powerful than the way that we've done things in the past. Everything systematized and technologically based. Just imagine how brilliant your kids would be under my system. Like, imagine their future that they could have. Now, here's another thing that we need to do. And I'm just telling everybody in advance we need to do it. Most of the business models that are in existence today are going to end up changing or going away as technology replaces most of them. Products are going to get cheaper. And cheaper and cheaper, and margins are going to get smaller and smaller and smaller, except for on stuff that is like personality based, for example. And there'll be a lot of competition for that because we teach everybody to do it. And really what's going to happen in society, people are going to need to learn a trade like they used to. A technology-based society will reduce the amount of jobs that people do down over a period of time until people all do things that are practical. A lawyer, a rabbi will be the highest paid job in society. I promise you that eventually. I don't have anything to do with it, right? A lawyer, a rabbi, a pastor, doctor, doctors are going to be less and less necessary. They'll always be necessary. No, that's not true, because there's always going to be problems, right? But the reality is that a doctor is going to be paid way more because he's going to have real money. People are going to sue him less because everything is going to be health-based, right? And show them how to solve problems, and then people learn to solve their own problems, then they don't get sick anymore. Yoga instructor. I mean, skills that are useful. And then as that fans out, what's going to happen is, okay, people need practical skills. We're teaching everybody right now to do what? Be a CEO, right? How many CEOs does this company need? It needs one, right? Now, there's lots of companies. We need to teach people how to have their own trade that's practical, how to promote other people's products and services, how to work with people and build people skills. This is another thing that we do in the system. What's part of the people skills? Remembering people's names, remember to listen. We teach people to be charming from a very young age. We teach people good language at a very young age. And the reality is that the kids are going to be so powerful, you can't even imagine what they're going to be able to do. Building technology, that's useful. Building systems is useful. But as technology takes over, technology will build its own technology. Right? You guys got to understand where this is headed. This is headed towards people tilling the earth again. And that's because we're so abundant and so prosperous. You till the earth and you be a leader, and that's what you do. These are two things that you do. Right? Yeah. Doctors diagnose online. Well, it won't be that. Eventually technology will diagnose. Be able to give somebody an advice that just diagnoses them. And then they'll send a check off to a doctor, and a doctor will look over it and then approve the instructions, something like that. Look, society is going to change people. You got to be prepared for it. And I'm telling you, nobody's prepared for it. Nobody. Right? I'm getting there. But I'll only be there when I'm making a lot of money. Right? Prepared. And even people with a lot of money, they're not prepared. Because a lot of their money is going to be worth nothing. If we don't do something, the economy will collapse. It could collapse very soon. Right? We got to re-systematize America. We got to get a group of people that are like the founding fathers together. Go through the Constitution, say, okay, we're going to keep this entire thing. Now let's add a section for the technology systems. And then let's build out the technology. And then let's compress down the legal systems till there's one law for everyone, rich and poor. And this is the future. This is the future of America, of everyone. Now, you see, you got to teach people to prosper at a very young age. Real assets are going to help people prosper. Real estate will always help people prosper, investing in real estate. Investments will always be there and will always help people prosper. And we'll get better and better and better investing in more long-term things. Like Warren Buffett does. I'm done. The teachings of KingDavid.com. Be sure to go to thekingdomofeloheim.org and order my book. Hope that helps. Does this help? I hope that you're getting excited about this stuff that I'm talking about, because I'm talking about solutions to literally every real problem ever that has existed in America. That are real solutions that don't just solve what's going on right now. They solve it permanently. Every solution of mine will work 1,000,000 years from now. Everything that I do. I won't do anything that won't be there, and even better 1,000,000 years from now. 1,000,000. Look, we're gonna teach kids to be so smart at such a young age that, I mean, the adults are gonna have to do something to advance their consciousness to keep up with what the kids are doing. See, my consciousness, I figured out how to grow my brain like a kid. My consciousness, my brain grows, in my opinion, is as fast or faster than a newborn baby. That's what's going on. You didn't notice it for a long time because I was ironing out the problems that had been created from an attempt on my life. And those problems are ironed out now. And now you notice I have solutions to literally every single, my brain healed from that, from something that it shouldn't be able to heal from. Okay. That nobody heals from. Nobody heals from what I'm healed from. Nobody. Not in 30 years. Okay. I'm totally healed. Now I have solutions for literally every single problem in society that's major, right? And I'm going through them. I'm going through each of them. Like, I don't have, for example, my military plan yet. I have a lot of it because I'm going to build a people's militia, right? I'm going to teach people in the United States how to defend themselves. What I'm going to do, because I've been studying martial arts my whole life. Nobody will want to mess with America. Everybody will know martial arts, and everybody will be able to defend themselves. Streets will be the safest places you can be, because everybody will be able to defend each other. And everybody will be courageous again, like they used to be. So I don't have my military plan ironed out yet, and that's important. But I know that I'm going to have a technology system-based military plan, the same way I'm having a technology system-based everything. And all the technology systems need to be decentralized, so one system is not dependent on the central system to function in case something happens to the technology. Right? Everything needs to be prepared and back up, for example, from energy weapons, from, what do they call those bursts of energy that can shut off electronics, right? From static bursts, whatever that technology is that shuts off electronics. So, like, we need to have technology that's built in that has redundancy systems where everything can just immediately boot back up and be functioning because there's a war coming. So we put those technology systems in place, and now all of a sudden, everything's got redundancy, everything's got backups. One system goes down, notifies another system, and there's like immediate action. And then all of a sudden, we've got a technology-based society where people are free and the children are intelligent. And what's that going to do for them? It's going to teach them at a young age how to know exactly what they want and how to plan their whole life to go for it. So we teach them at a young age. They know exactly what they want. They can visualize it. They can keep attention on it. They've got it mapped out from their purpose, from deep in their center, and then they go for it their whole life. They go after that thing they want. That's the world. That is the world right there. I want my son, Gabriel, Kal-El, Wood Shakan, and Angel Shakan. Those are the world I want them to grow up in, is a world like that. We're a world where they grow up knowing what they want and what they can do, and they've got the resources to accomplish it. They've got the food, the water, the nutrition. They've got the systems. They've got the skills, and now all of a sudden they can learn anything that they ever wanted to learn. Those kids will be so brilliant. It'll be unbelievable. I'm done.